Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon will be linked in the episode right up below. Oh, yes, we got through it. I have no idea how this show is going to be sustainable. I just know that we're getting there. Don't worry about it. You're not getting rid of me yet, because the shit that we're going to talk about today, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you wrapped. Okay, so I did a re-up. Corey and I did a re-up because we've got some serious stuff, and I was like, I don't want to belabor those other points. I want to get into the nitty gritty. So you listen to an episode, right? If you're caught up, you listen to an episode where I basically said the left ain't loyal. We don't have each other's back. We don't have a range, right? We don't have range, barometer, bandwidth for the contradictions, for comedy, for art, right? For each other. We don't care about redemption and blah, 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 all that stuff. So. I'm like, great. I was asked a question this weekend, and it was connected to all of this. And it's partly why you got the episode you got the other day. Good episode. You should say it's a pretty good episode. We got some pretty good stuff. But listen. This episode is going to be controversial. We are talking about the right to be funny. We are talking about the right to be funny. In that, what we're actually talking about, right, is what is an artist's responsibility to art and also to identity, right? What is our responsibility to art, to identity? And of course, it's going to be connected to the left as a whole, right? I'm going to preface you with this prompt, okay? You remember, because comedy has become this massively controversial thing. You know, what is acceptable? What is not acceptable? What are comedians allowed to say? What they're not allowed to say? What we expect a comedian to say, a lot of which is shaped by identity, and what comedians are not allowed to say. We've gone into this place where we just police the shit out of everybody's language. And I got into comedy, right? Because I like to be where the fight is. That's honestly, I love the craft. I love the craft. I loved gab in general, but it did take me a minute for my comedic heft to reach my political might, right? In one area, I'm really, 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 really strong. And the other, I wasn't, even though I am good at yapping on a stage. I had to grow them up, right? At a certain point, you realize that the vision that you have for the type of thing that you want to do, you got to put years in, and you got to put time in your 10,000 hours to get it to that place. Why am I being so weird? What I want to say is, basically, when I first started, I remember one of my first open mics, I tell this joke, right? And it's a race joke. I'm in a room, what I don't know at the time is like, it's one of these and by the way, I will be talking very candidly here. So if you need kitten gloves, this is not the episode, fast forward or whatever. But there are some open mics that are just Fight Club for pussies. Like, they just, you know what I mean? Like, they don't really want to fight. They want to just be weird and say the edgiest things, and they don't care about what's funny, and they don't care about the craft. But those people, right? We've seen those people. They're a dime a dozen, because in any artistic expression, right, the majority of people are trash, right? That's just a fact. The majority of people in it aren't good at it, right? But that's how we know good art from bad art, and comedy is not considered an art form. So anyway, I'm in this club. I tell this joke, and I'm in one of these spaces where it's just like, where I'm like, these men have never heard of therapy. And I tell this joke about Black Lives Matter, and they laugh, and I like the laugh, right? The point is to make people laugh. That is the point of comedy, right? But I didn't like the kind of laughter that I got. It was too much for what was a pretty good joke, right? About Black Lives Matter, about some of my experience in it. But there was something in the laughter that I didn't like, right? And that's when I was like, great, we got to scale it back. And I'm bringing that up to say, right, that this is not a complete conclusive thing, right? What I want to say is my approach, and the approach that the case that I'm going to make for comedy right now is about as an approach to the craft. Not everybody gets to do whatever they want. It's a case for full artistic expression, right? And trust each other. Trust. Let me fucking hit you with what I mean. Okay. First of all, we don't respect the crap. We used to be funny. We used to be so fucking cool. We used to dream about, and I say we, I'm talking about the left, I'm talking about queers. We just fucking box wine and talk about owning land. We just need some land at 4:00 in the morning, right? We used to be funny. There's a lot of reasons why we stopped, but one of those reasons is outrage. Now we're tying in the things, okay? We ain't loyal. Made a case several times over in these last few episodes about the fact that we go to outrage and we think outrage is acceptable, outrage is enough. I am saying it is not. It is not. It is the antithesis of, and now I'm actually seeing it through the lens of art. What am I saying, right? What am I really saying? Okay, let me just say this. Let's say I'm your buddy, right? I'm your buddy. I am your buddy. Let's say I'm your buddy, right? I'm your friend and I hate film, right? Let's say I'm your friend and I hate film. I hate movies. I never watch it. Anytime somebody talks about it, I'm like, ugh, I barely know any filmmakers. Let's say I don't. So I don't know any filmmakers. I don't care for film. I don't know any movies, right? One day I'm online and I come across a trailer, right? And then I watch this trailer. So then I call you up, right? Fuck it, I hate film, but I watched this trailer and it pissed me off. And I'm like, yo, we got to start a national campaign because I don't like how this movie trailer made me feel. You would laugh. You'd be like, you're fucking ridiculous. And it would be even more so if you were a cinephile, if you were a film buff, right? You'd be like, oh no, I can't take this person seriously. And yet every trans person who said that Dave Chappelle was transphobic was immediately like applauded. We just ran with that. When I asked people, do you know what Chappelle was saying, like in the thing, do you get it? They had no idea what I meant. That goes back to that harkens back to an episode, right? You have to demonstrate comprehension about what the other side, which more often than not is the same side, is saying. Did you demonstrate comprehension about it? And what was the offensive thing? So when I asked what was the thing that was the joke that was offensive? What is the transphobic thing? And there wasn't a clear path. And for the record, I am talking about a single Dave Chappelle special, the one that was the lightning rod one. I think it came out in 2020. He got like, yeah, he's old. Like he drinks too much brown liquor. He got weird and, a little bit obsessive, but that's kind of that's part of the crowd. Like it's what are people reacting to right now? And honestly, trans folks made Dave Chappelle a lot of money that he didn't need to make. Did we make an artist that we really liked famous? Did we give them money? Did we find, I don't know, maybe a transgender woman comic and actually put some money in a GoFundMe? I've never seen a trans bitch with money in a GoFundMe. We need to help these girls out. Right? Did we do that? No, because we're not in the business of generating art anymore. We're in the business of judging it and actually stopping the process, right? So most of the trans comics that I know or that I'm aware of, right, are not good. It's not because they're trans. It's because they're scared. They're not good because they're scared. And a lot of comedians would probably be better if they weren't scared. Now, I want to be clear, right? I want to be really, really clear. If you are a good comedian, if you are a great comedian, the power analysis is clear, right? If you're an okay comedian, it's a little bit less clear. But when we've created cultures of outrage that don't require competency on the artistic expression or the art form, we're in trouble, right? Art is democratic. It is a process. People get to engage in it. When I'm on stage, I am making a joke and I'm asking you to buy into my opinion or my position through laughter. Sometimes the laughter is a rejection of that, but it is a democratic process. Outrage, I've realized, is dictatorial. It's very much, it dictates how you should feel about it, right? Without ever having to understand it. It's very much the opposite of the Black American tradition of call and response. It's very lecture-y, which is Aristotelian, which is very much Western and white, right? I'm going to lecture you. And for the record, we all know I love a fucking lecture, right? Yeah, give me a podium. I love a podium. right? But we've moved into outrage and cancel culture and the virtue signaling, and that's enough because it says something about me. We're not making things and we're not championing people who do. We just, if you were listening to Dave Chappelle's jokes, and I'm going to move on from Chappelle because I just wanted to get out of the way because it's hard to talk about trans comedy without first naming that. And I want to be really clear. I don't think that Dave Chappelle made a single transphobic joke in that entire special, right? I think his jokes. There were two jokes in particular. I didn't care for the turf reference, like J.K. Rowling. Like, if you want to mention how you feel about something, bring up that. Bring up the fact that he clearly read the fucking headline of an article and didn't read the article itself. It's like men's number one fun thing to do, right? Not just that. Honestly, everybody at this point, but they can stop reading at like fucking 38 these days, right? Honestly, earlier, you've heard me laugh about that. I was like, you don't have ADHD, bitch. You haven't read a book to cover in years. Anywho. Let's get back to the Chappelle thing. If you were listening to what he was saying, right? Again, ignore the J.K. If you were listening to what he was saying, he was like, he's like, and this is why the black people, not, I'm talking about the niggas, the black people, because then that means most of you don't, right? But the black people that I know, and black trans people included, had a much more nuanced take because what he was really arguing was, I know for a fact, and I'm angry about the fact that gays and lesbians and trans people have more rights and more protections than black people do, even though black people led and championed civil rights in this country and actually were foundational to securing yours, right? That matters. That's incredibly significant. That was something that a lot of the people who are outraged, who are largely white, never really took into consideration, right? Because you didn't listen to the special, because you weren't obligated to actually understand where this person's frustration came from. And if you asked me, I would have been like, listen, Dave, this is going to shock you, but there's like black queer women and black queer trans people who can problematize this. But he wasn't thinking about that because, like a lot of people in America and in the world, they're like, well, the buck stops where my oppression starts, right? The buck stops where my oppression starts. That's a serious problem in the trans community, right? There's a self-obsession. It's not just trans community, it's the queer community, right? You already know how I feel. Gender and sexuality are not even close to being trustworthy markers for one's quality of life. Race and class are, right? Race and class are, and right there with it is ability, right? Those are trustworthy indicators for quality of life. There is something to be said about the fact that for people who experience, like, okay, I say that something happens and I say that it's racist, right? Think about how people would respond to it now. Don't think about me from my position because I'm beloved, right? Just think of a regular black. Think of a regular black. Okay. Now think about a regular trans person who says that they experience transphobia. What's been the reaction, right? Belief, largely belief. And I'm not talking about the rest of the world. Fuck the conservatives. I don't give a shit about the GOP, and they're all rotten. This administration doesn't reveal that. I don't know what possibly could, but there is a vested, there's like, well, we believe you. We believe that this happened. That's not an experience that black people have ever had. It's definitely not an experience women have had when it comes to sexualized violence, but there was a kind of embrace, right? There's a kind of embrace and a kind of championing of, and the uphill battle of history is just not there, right? A vested interest in denying that your experience of a thing is true to maintain a systemic imbalance of power, right? More importantly, though, right? And when you say this is outrageous, he's transphobic, this is transphobic, I'm canceling this, whatever, where's the language generated then? Right? Art is democratic. I get on a stage, I say my jokes, okay? You buy in with laughter or not, or you boo me off the fucking stage. You get to decide whether you engage with my art or not. I'm asking why we think that this not only am I actually, you know what? No, fuck that. I'm not asking anything. I'm not asking a single thing. I'm making several arguments and assertions, okay? How outrage is a problem because across the left, we go to outrage to virtue signal. We don't engage in art or artistic expression. We decide that somebody's presentation of a character is outrageous. We decide that a joke is transphobic and therefore the person needs to be canceled. We don't take ownership for anything to do with the problem or even our position. And we don't feel the need to demonstrate comprehension on what the other side is trying to argue or to prove. And I'm using the arena of comedy to make this argument. Now that we've done the Chappelle stuff, we've gotten that out of the way. We can start fresh and anew with the same, from the same foundation. So I was part of this comedy thing, comedy documentary called We Are Pat. Let me have a little sip. So I'm part of this. I was part of this great documentary called We Are Pat. Go ahead, find it everywhere. I think they're trying to find a supply right now, but it had its sort of victory lap here in Los Angeles. It premiered in Tribeca. I was fortunate enough to go. We Are Pat is about Julia Sweeney's character on SNL named Pat, right? Core question in that documentary was, is the character Pat transphobic? Right? Is the character Pat transphobic because this character was genderless? It was a joke about being genderless. It was a lot of we just don't know what you are type stuff, right? And the real question behind that was, how does art hold up over time and how do our perceptions around it change? That was the point, right? It's a great documentary. Shout out Ro, go see it. Before each show, right? Before both the premiere at Tribeca in New York and here, I got to do a set. Okay. So in this smaller one, I did a set, took some liberties with time because I'm adorbs, right? I did it along with two other trans comics. Later that night, a conversation ensued, and the conversation had a lot. It was full of artists, right? Producers, filmmakers, writers, largely white in this case, but that's all right. That's honestly just statistically what is normal, and the subject matter of the jokes came up, right? And I want to be really clear about something. My jokes are fucking edgy. Ooh, I got so good at this shit. I know I don't put it out because honestly, when you got the sauce, it's going to spread regardless. You know what I mean? I just got to keep making it. No, it's because I have a debilitating issue with social media that we're all working on. It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. Okay. So the content comes up and it's not my joke that's on, this. Honestly, I made a trans shooter joke, which is fucking hilarious. Right. But it is a woo. So the joke in question was one of the comedians, and both of the comedians were trans white women. Okay. So trans women who were white, and then me. One of the jokes on stage referenced having a big dick, right? And then something, there was a, it was in the context of like walking around, the playground with this huge dick, and one of the people who was white and trans and a woman was like, I didn't really like that joke because of what's happening to us, right? And that is fair. Take a minute to really think about that. That's fair. It's fair to be like, oh, I don't know, right? And for the record, this person's also a comedian. That matters, right? So a trans woman comedian said about another trans woman comedian, both white, I don't like this joke that she said because in the political climate that we're in, right? Making that kind of joke has a more negative impact and it's deleterious and it's dangerous. It is dangerous to make a joke like that on stage, knowing that there's these narratives about trans women and children and predation and what the trans experience has been, right? And this is something that a lot of people at the table agreed with. And it got me thinking, right? It got me thinking. And there was some level of outrage too. It's like, yeah, I didn't. And I watched that joke play out. That wasn't my conclusion. There was laughter and there was understanding, but I'm certain that there were people who were offended by it. And I think that we forgot that it's okay that comedy can be offensive. In fact, a lot of the time, that was the point. The point was to be offensive. But when you're outraged, you forget that. When you've created bullshit notions of what safety is, right? You forget that at the same time, we can't deny the urgency around the political climate. This is why, right? And I'm now going to make the case for why I think that we actually need to expand our aperture for artistic expression. Okay. Number one, comedy is an art form. We've talked about this already. It's not respected as such, right? But if you can't understand the anatomy of a joke, the rhetorical devices that are being used, right? You're maybe missing some things. But again, it's okay. You don't need to be an expert to weigh in or to have an opinion on something, right? It's mainly, I'm saying we don't have respect for it even as a craft because we don't respect art because we're so busy critiquing and destroying our own artists that we're actually making shittier artists. That's the number one part of my argument. We are making shittier artists. Let me explain. And then I'm going to bring in a comedian, a clip from them, and we're going to go into what language gets policed and why it doesn't work. And then I'm going to hit you. Ooh, I'm going to hit you with something that has me on the fence. Okay. Where I'm like, ooh, I think this actually is like right on the line. Okay. So you're about to hear some offensive shit. Let me go. Okay. So why I am against policing our trans comedians and our, artists in general is because we're making shittier art as a result. Let me cook. I'm in the kitchen. Those were eggs. That's all I know how to make. Okay. Okay. You ready? Okay. Here we go. I'm going to reference James Baldwin. I got to be right if I'm bringing in, right, that faggot. By the way, he would love that. He would love that joke. Okay. This is the trans comic versus the Negro artist. Ooh, I'm about to cook. Get set, lock in. Okay, so Baldwin wrote an essay, and this essay came out, right, before any of his books, right? Before Go Tell It to the Mountain, before Another Country, before Giovanni's Room. This is when he was consuming and reading things and thinking about art and artistry. And remember, this is a queer man back when queer actually meant something other than haircuts and feelings and outrage. Because I'm going to add that now to the shit because artistic expression was everything. They tried to take our art. Remember how they took away free speech? And actually it was because they took it away from us. It always comes down to us and our shit. That's how powerful we are, right? Somehow trans people made Dave Chappelle more famous. What if we put up some of our own? But the art has to be good. Here is my case for why we're making shittier trans artists because we police the shit out of them. The trans comic versus the Negro. So before James Baldwin writes all these books, he wrote an essay, and the essay was called Everybody's Protest Novel. Okay. So in this essay, and this was, by the way, explosive at the time, this was like, okay, writing something, like writing a critique about other people's books back then was a diss track. It was a fucking mixtape. It was huge because people could read back then. And it was massive. And what's often missed, right? And then you have the racial dynamic, right? So he goes on two books, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which we're totally fine. Like we don't need to even talk about this, right? But he talks about Richard Wright and Native Son, right? Don't worry, I got you. I'm going to catch you up. Richard Wright at the time was the penultimate most well-known famous Black author in America and really arguably the world, right? He was the guy that when James Baldwin thought, I want to be an author that is world recognized and respected, Richard Wright was the biggest author at that time. He was the Black guy writer. Okay. Native Son flew off the shelves, right? Oh God, people love reading it. White people love reading, especially. James Baldwin in Everybody's Protest Novel talks about the fact, right? And he goes in on him. And for the record, this is how diligent we have to be. And I don't want to say that James didn't know he was going to get something out of it. But what often gets obfuscated is the fact that Richard Wright actually helped put James Baldwin on, right? A little bit. He helped put him on. He helped make connections, and not in any way, not in a way that we could call mentorship or anything like that. Nothing meaningful, nothing more meaningful. But he did. He had helped look out for him here and there. They had a friendship, is the point, right? They had a friendship and they had a rapport. So he felt very blindsided when he put out everybody's protest novel, right? And I think, and for the record, as Baldwin later reflects, he was completely correct in being he kind of felt like he took shots at him, and with their relationship, they could have gotten a heads up or whatever. But what he didn't really do was contend with what was being asserted, because I don't even think he thought of it. And this is where queer is powerful. Queer is powerful when we're informed and we're smart and we make art, as when we're engaged in the craft, as we criticize the craft. We are not smart when we're outside of it, and we have pulled ourselves out of so many things. And this was my problem with Native Son as well. So let me make the case, right? Why we're making shittier artists, because we're being regressive, okay? The thesis around the interrogation of Native Son, right? Richard Wright's book. In everybody's protest novel, this is the argument that James Baldwin makes in this essay, right? To me, the thesis is very much about Bigger Thomas as an unactualized being, right? Bigger Thomas is a 20-year-old, right, Black youth living in America. His life is extremely violent and tragic, not inconsistent with what it was like, right, to be a young Black man living in poverty in Chicago in the 1930s, right? The book isn't some throwaway book, but so, like, what is the problem? What's to be interrogated? Okay. You read the book, you read about Bigger, whatever, right? It ends in a very awful, right, violent and profound way, right? I'm not even going to belabor too much on what happens. I think it's very widely known. There's movies on it, but basically, this character who has been rejected and hated and judged, right, over and over again, and he's got hatred and fear and frustration at the realities of systemic racism. Only in extreme violent acts does he feel like his manhood has been restored, right? Only in rape and in murder does he feel like he's put back the hatred out into the world that has rejected and hated him so much, right? Okay. Baldwin's point is that Bigger Thomas, right, was written as a reaction to racism versus as a fully realized human being in the human condition, right? To achieve personhood, manhood, this person had to become the most violent, vicious beast, right? When the reality is, James Baldwin himself, all of us, anyone who has felt injustice based on what you look like on any level, but especially if it was systemic, right? Especially when you were made to feel powerless. That's what I mean when I say systemic. You were powerless to change the conditions that were foisted upon you, thrust upon you, not by choice, right? The assumptions that are made about you, but again, bolstered by systemic beliefs about you because of what you look like, right? On some level, we've all had that experience. But for people, when it's systemic, it's endless and it's daily and it's all the time, and it wears on you and you feel powerless and you feel a rage like you couldn't possibly imagine. The difference is that when you are a Black person or when you are a person of color, it's largely around race, but let's fast forward. When the aperture goes wider as we go, when you are disabled, right? When you're poor, we've all felt this on some level, right? You were powerless to change it. Why do white people lose their shit when they hear the term privilege, even though it's the softest term? And by the way, I fucking hate the term. I hate how it's used and applied. You all know that privilege is about what, it's supposed to be about, what you've, privilege is about what you haven't had to go through, right? It doesn't attack what you've gone through. Right. But the way that we use it, we attack. It sounds like you're telling people that they've never experienced anything in their life. Who's not going to lose their shit about that? But the question is, why do they respond that way? right? And it's because for the first time in their life, they got a small slice of that feeling of racial powerlessness. You are saying something about me and my life that's based on my race that's not fair, right? When you are Black in America, when you're Black in the West, this was a feeling that you experienced, this powerlessness, this rage when you were single digits at age, right? You understood this, that you were less than and worthless. As you knew this to be true as soon as the world became aware of you. That's when you became aware of this, right? So we have to work through this sense of worthlessness, and wrest from the world a sense of dignity and power, which is partly what makes us most honest. What WASP culture encourages is passive aggressiveness, hiding, and repression. Okay, so the argument in this book, about this book, in James Baldwin's essay, is that the character was written as a reaction to racism, and in doing so actually affirmed the very stereotypes that should have been contradicted or subverted in the art form. That in reacting and making art from that place of reaction, from that place of the smallness, right, of presumption and assumption, right? You've actually affirmed the thing. You made less than art. When we tell our artists on our side that they cannot, must not, do not, did not think of this, can't say this, can't do that, we are actually making shit fuck artists, shit fuck comedians. And I'm telling you for a fact, I've been around the great comedians out there, not the really famous ones. They don't fucking know that I exist at all. But the really good ones that I like, they fuck with my comedy, right? So does the population, right? The comedians I don't like, they're the ones who are stuck on the LGBTQ circuit. They're terrified to make jokes that are good because they actually can't, because they're not allowed to fail. And a huge part of making art is failure. We in our outrage, right, put a muzzle on who might be our best and brightest because they are so afraid of your outrage and you're so afraid of their power. We're destroying the best artists we could have because we spend more time being outraged at people's attempts rather than support the craft itself, right? And in doing so, maybe even champion our best artists. It's why our knee-jerk reaction was to attack Chappelle, which actually, to be honest, ended up helping his career out quite a bit. It didn't even occur to our community to champion one of our own, right? In fact, we turn on them like this because the left ain't loyal. Oh, you see how I'm pulling all together these threads, the outrage, the lack of comprehension on what other people are trying to argue or what they're trying to communicate, right? But now I'm taking it even a step further. As a result of our wayward ways, we are making worse artists, okay? Let me be clear. Transness is pretty fucking new as a concept, right, in the world, right? We should be generating new language. We should be succeeding and failing in what applies or what doesn't apply, right? We should want to understand it. I'll be clear. Okay. I mentioned the Negro artist. That's not a term anybody uses anymore, right? Why is that? Why is that? Okay. Back in James Baldwin's time, when you come and post the Harlem Renaissance era, you're talking about, someone who was coming up in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and all this shit, right? Including when this novel, Native Son, was written, right? No Black artist wanted to be seen as a Negro artist. I'm sipping some water. Right? And why? Because at the time, to be referred to as a Negro artist was to pigeonhole you. It was to classify you. There was language that was being used all the time about art being primitive, right? So our best artists were largely not recognized by the white world unless you played into these tropes and stereotypes, right? Which, by the way, right? This guy's jokes aren't transphobic. I don't think we understand ourselves historically and today. If we actually stepped into the role, we're actually tastemakers. We create culture. Black folks do it better than anybody else, but the queer community does too. We literally made cancel culture a practice because it came from call out, which technically started from call in, but we all started using it because we're not honest about what we're personally incentivized around. There's a case to be made that, and it's not, secret or something. James Baldwin knew that in taking on Richard Wright, he was creating an inroad for himself because they only let one in at a time. Sounding familiar. They didn't have the benefit of the internet at that time, right? We do. We get to decide. And we've been choosing really poorly, right? Again, trans is a new concept. You want to know why? Oh, wait, I was making the case around the Negro artist. Okay, so the Negro artist, it was a way that white people othered Black artistry, right? Not even so much the artist himself, Black artistry. It was considered less than. It was considered poor, right? And it could only be championed if it affirmed their idea of the exotic, right? That was the reality in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right? The Negro artist. Now we say Black, and I'm a Black artist. And when people say, I don't want to be seen as a trans artist or a Black artist, we kind of roll our eyes at them because there has been more of a case made. The language and our assumptions around it have changed when it comes to understanding that Black is universal and it's incredible and awesome and everything else, but it is a type of artistry. It is a type of expression. It's a type of sensibility, right? It's much more expansive a term. I can tell you for a fact that comedians who are trans are fucking hilarious. Trans comics are shit. They're garbage because you don't understand the point of getting on the stage in comedy. The number one goal as an artist is being when you're a comedian is being funny, right? I was more smart than I was funny. It actually was a disservice to the craft. And again, it is good. It is good. It is very good to feel a massive sense of responsibility to represent you and your people well. But the number one goal is to tell good jokes. You want to know why? Because that tells a better story. A great trans comedian does more for trans people than the outrage, than the outrage of the trans community, and than a PC trans comic ever could. The best way to win an argument is to do it better than they ever could. And you want to know the one thing that I was offended by one thing Dave Chappelle said, and only one thing. Right? That we didn't write those fucking jokes. Do you want to know why we didn't write those jokes? It's not that we couldn't. It's that the freedom to do it requires trust, and we have destroyed it across the left. It requires space, capaciousness, right? A willingness to fail. But if any of our fucking people fail, we go straight for the goddamn jugular. Let me be clear. We don't even have language around transness. We should be actively trying and seeking and failing. You want to know why I believe that comedy is an incredible arena? Because again, it's democratic. It is democratic. Outrage is dictatorial. Why can't we defend the idea that trans women are women? Right? We trans women are women, and then we get really fucking outraged, right? By anybody who has questions. Do you want to know why? I realized this pretty fucking early on, to be honest with you. I realized this in 2018, but then I went around and made sure that I was right anyway, anecdotally and, through research. Yeah, it's because we don't actually have an argument for it. We demonstrated the solution, but not the formula of how we got there. Do you want to know why? Because we can't generate discourse in public anymore. And that's one of the best fucking things we do. I mean, Black people still do. We're gangster as fuck. Like, Black people generate, we're like, this is happening. We have a term, Kumbaya River Collective comes out with identity politics, right? There's something happening where that application of it is missing, though, of this identity politics. Kimberly Crenshaw comes up with intersectionality, which, by the way, I heard some random white trans girl who is one of the more forward political thinkers be like, intersectionality is a CIA op, da 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 da. And I'm like, bitch, go read some fucking books. Like, I'm so tired of you. Okay, I am so tired of you. I would love to hear a white trans woman talk about any fucking other thing. I get it. You've heard me say this before. I get it. It was a shock to you to realize that oppression can manifest the way that it does in your life. It is hard being a woman in the world, no doubt about it. But it's been 8 years. You should try talking about somebody else's experience for 5 seconds, right? You might expand your fucking worldview and not sound like an idiot. The CIA and like every op is going to use our weaknesses against us, right? It was the application of the thing, but at the very least, we should be attempting to generate discourse and language that helps us understand a thing and explain a thing so that we could defend a thing. The truth is, right, we decided that the outrage was enough of a defense. It turns out that we were fucking wrong about that. And you want to know who propagated that idea? It was white, trans, and queer people who did, right? Liberals will just follow anything anyway. What we're not understanding is that's a liberal practice, right? Again, what happened to white queers? Went out, came back, missionaries. It's all about policing language, and you can't say that, and this is what this means, and blah, 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 blah. Somewhere along that, and it's okay to interrogate language, but we lost what the point of it was. What is the point of language? To convey what? Meaning, understanding. To be understood, right? To understand. We decided we didn't have to do that anymore. That's so stupid when you say it like that. Right? We have never made the argument for why trans women are women in any consistent or meaningful way, because we don't give a fuck about women. We don't care about bitches at all. Right? Please be so fucking serious. Okay, so that's my first argument. Pretty fucking good, I might admit. We are regressive, and we're making shittier artists again. Right? We are telling trans artists, trans comedians, based on our bludgeon of outrage, right, that they can only make comedy that is a reaction to transphobia versus being allowed to be their full selves on stage with their full sense of humor. That is the best case. A happy, fully realized, exceptional trans comedian is a million times more powerful than the outrage of a handful of trans people, or even thousands, at a particular joke. That you make better jokes, better comedy based on what you think is funny, so that you can be a fully realized human being and a fully realized artist. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Corey, why don't we start with number two is about to slap. By the way, this is about to that was the only one that was a little educational. Okay, little educational. I had to reference a book, so I took it seriously. Right, I brought up James, but so right now we're going to talk about language using Gianmarco Ceresi. He's a comedian I really fuck with. Right, I'm going to tell you a joke, but then I'm going to bring up a comedian I fucking love, and we're gonna play your joke on the air. That I do think walks a line. It walks a line, but again, right? What is the overall purpose of the outrage, right? Or or its original intent, which I think or what the whole point of being a part of the fucking left is. Like, I think we've lost sight of those things, right? Okay. Let's play Gianmarco.
I have a joke that I'm going to say later tonight. And that joke uses the term illegal immigrant. And listen, I've had progressive friends whom I respect that have pulled me aside, and they say, hey, you should reconsider that. It's a hurtful phrase. It implies that someone's existence is illegal. The appropriate term, the sensitive term, the kind term, the true term is undocumented immigrant. And I listen to them. I'm not an asshole about this stuff. I changed it. I went around the country and Canada and Australia using the term undocumented immigrant. And you know what happened? Stopped getting laughs. So I had to go back to my progressive friends and be like, I'm sorry, unlike you guys, I have to win the popular vote.
Okay. We won't get into the semantics, because I'm like, actually, the Democrats tend to win the popular vote overall. But it's in this election. I don't think most recent one, we didn't win any. We will barely win anywhere anymore. You know what? What am I doing? Gianmarco is a leftist, right? Despite, I mean, he did sound a little gay. We had to adjust his voice so I could steal this for you. But by the way, he's not gay. Isn't that crazy? If you know this comedian and you think he's funny, it was shocking. It's not a bit. I thought he was talking to his girl. He kept saying his girlfriend. I thought it was a bit. No, this nigga is straight, but he's a theater guy, and that explains a lot. That explains a lot. But this is a leftist. This is a progressive. He's a comedian, right? He's got great takes. He's Jewish. He's very pro-Palestine. Shocking. Yeah, you can be anti-apartheid. You could be anti-apartheid. You could be Jewish. You could be a theater kid. You could not be gay, and you could tell a joke where you use the term illegals, right? This is why now I'm making a more controversial case, but get into it with me. Get into the biz with me, okay? Number one, I said we have an obligation to allow our artists to be great, and it takes time and failure to be great. We also need to be able to generate discourse. Okay, first and foremost, some of the terms that were in this special, that's John Marco's special coming out. Well, it's already out. Go ahead and check it if you feel like it. Okay, but we made a whole thing about policing language, and that was all the work. And so, okay. Don't say the R word. Don't use the term retard. Okay, got it. First of all, it is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's being used in comedy everywhere. Okay, listen. Stick with me. I'm about to fucking smash this. I'm cooking. Call me Chef Fuchs. I'm on it. Are you ready? Okay. We said you can't say that word. Right? If you say that word, you're canceled. We said it. If you say that word in community, you're canceled. If you say that word in, on stage, you're canceled. You're a bad comic, whatever. Okay. And remember, my goal is never to normalize shit fuck words, right? That's not the point. My concern is that became the activism, but not the systematic breakdown of the Section 504 protections, right? So we gutted disability rights. That happened on our watch, but what mattered is I told that person they couldn't say the R word, right? Like we've traded, like that's the outrage. The outrage is the activism. No, the fuck it's not. This is what I love about activism. It doesn't reveal it doesn't. Do you know what I love about activism? It doesn't build character; it reveals it. Right? It tells you really quickly what all your bullshit is and what your contradictions are. Right? That's what I love about it. So the thing is, now it's like I'm outraged. You can't say that word. I yelled at somebody, or I walked out of a thing, or whatever. But we didn't do anything as Section 504 was being gutted, and you already heard me yap that history. But why does that matter? Okay. First of all, we have to look at why people want to say the word in the first place, right? People voted for Donald Trump because they said, I want to be able to say it. One, it is annoying, but true that when you create a force against something, there's going to be a counter force, right? That's how we made Jordan Peterson famous. That's how you made Dave Chappelle more famous, right? Jordan Peterson should be a fucking unknown hack skin tag rotting away in the tenure system of Canada's Northern Harvard, right? U of T. But a bunch of young trans folks in particular were like, no, he must respect my pronouns. He's going to say what I want him to say. And then now we have Jordan Peterson, right? When you create a counterforce against something, so what did we made it edgy, right? And then we destroyed morale because it became all about policing people's language, because I personally got something out of it, right? If I take you down, and I know because the Queers was doing this years ago. Right? So what happened? We made it edgy. We made it taboo. Right. And for the record, it's fucking hack if you operate from that place. But just hear me out. Remember, I'm making a case, right? We took away the option because we have not chosen our comedic champions. We don't feel like we have to because we attack art now more than we make it on the left. We remove the possibility of problematizing the word. right? I want you to think about, I call this the arena, right? Where do democratic discourse, where's the democratic process of idea engagement happening in the world anymore, right? Where's it happening? Online, certainly, but I mean in the real world. And, in school, there's an inherent power balance. But I talked about outrage being dictatorial. This is, you got to do things the way I'm telling you to do it, whereas art is democratic, right? I get on stage, there's a power imbalance initially, and then very quickly, it's not the case, right? It is a call and response dynamic, right? We're exchanging power at different moments. I present an opinion, and you either reject, right? You reject or affirm that opinion through laughter or the lack thereof. Sometimes, right? I make a fool of the thing or of myself, and the laughter can be a rejection of me. These signs and signifiers, this exchange of information, this democratic process is happening in real time, and people leave and get to decide what things meant to them. But ultimately, what matters most is, was it funny? Did you like the person? Did you make the person think? Right? In our refusal to engage with particular terms, we actually keep them edgy. We create taboo around them, and we don't interrogate them, which means we don't evolve. We don't evolve our language, right? Sex worker, right? In his special, John Marco, he talked about undocumented immigrant versus illegal. What are the vast majority of people? What is the fastest way to convey a message, and what is the most normalized way that they do it? The point is to make fun of the concept of illegal, right? Not to not say the word. When we say sex worker, right? What is that? Right? That's a description, right? We say sex worker now instead of hooker or prostitute. Is the point the language, or is the point the examination of the concept of the term, of our assumptions that we make about it? That's comedy. That's great comedy. That's good comedy. Yes, there's a lot of bad comedy, right? But we have to ask ourselves this: is it working? Has the way that we've approached things in the last decade, in the last 5 years, in the last 7, is it working? Are you fucking happy? Are you happy at all? Are we making amazing shit? Are we making huge No. Why not try something fucking different? But also, this is backed by just history and reality, okay? You want to know what undocumented immigrant is? It's a description of a thing. It's a description of a term. It's not an examination of the term. It's not an examination of the person's experience, right? Illegal is. First of all, it sounds funnier, which is true. It's what's most commonly understood. And then you get to problematize and interrogate it, right? Sex worker is a description, right? Hooker and prostitute, that's a term. Sex work is the description. Hooker, prostitute, term. It's the most. How can I problematize a thing that I can't say? How can I draw attention to and mock or show the funny or the contradiction in the term, in the thing, if I can't say it? How am I supposed to turn the racist assumption on its head if I can't say the thing? And by the way, you'd be hard pressed to find better Black comics. We have done our due diligence. You don't need to have a bunch of comedians running around saying the N-word. But the truth is, they couldn't write a better joke on it than Black people could. That's why any non-Black comics who are using that word, particularly the hard R, they're hack. Everybody knows that they're hack. Everybody knows it. You want to know why? Because we allow the art to make the argument and the case for us. It's that simple, right? Homeless, right? Houseless. What is funnier? So much of comedy is about sounds. And again, it's about conveying a message or a meaning as quickly as possible in the most subversive way, sometimes also in the most direct way. I'll give you one of my jokes that is a hair raiser for people. Okay. It's one of the best jokes I've ever fucking written. I love this joke, right? Joke goes, and I could have played it for you. But no, you're getting the good now. Okay. But in this joke, I said, all right. And by the way, this is true. This is a real article. I said, yeah, I read this article in The Atlantic, right? The headline got me, right? The headline was, these are the two most dismissive words on the internet. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to know what the two most dismissive fucking words on the internet are. According to the Atlantic, what do they got to say? So I go, I read the article. They said that the two most dismissive words on the internet were go off. And I'm like, huh. On the internet, huh. I thought it was nigger bitch. But go off, right? Take a beat, right? So most people, the term, you can't, right? It's offensive. Again, some art is meant to be offensive. I don't know when that became not okay to do, right? But let's actually examine the joke, right? I get told an article says this. And these are the two most dismissive words. I go and I look at those two words. The words are go off. What am I saying? What's beyond the offensiveness of my joke? Nigger bitch. It's because, yeah, racism exists on the internet. Probably because I've also been referred to as one before, right? Which is true. And like, to be clear, it's just straight nigger over here. Okay. But anyway, that joke is considered offensive, but I'm actually examining the argument that's being made. I'm challenging it, right? And I'm doing it by being funny and bringing myself and my experience onto the stage, right? When I talk about the Jewish Black tradition, and I've got bits on that, right? I'm gonna make a comparison, right? I'll talk about how Jews got froze too. They're just boneless, right? I need to be able to exercise full artistic freedom, and I should be able to develop my talent and my craft enough that we're on the inside of the jokes. But if we can't even get to a place where we get to generate discourse, we're just making shitty artists. It just so happens that I'm not influenceable. Like, I'm not. I'm too much of an asshole. I'm joking. It's because I study the craft and I'm protective of us. And sometimes I have to be against each other as well. So let's go back to the initial, joke in question. White trans woman says, this joke, I feel this way about it. That is right. And it's correct. You can feel that way, right? I still want more of those jokes. I still want more of jokes like that, because why should the right says trans people diddle children? Our response is, well, we have to judge that we're outraged by that. But what if we start making fun of it? Right? What if we take a more subversive approach where you show the absurdity of the thing? That is what's most impactful. That's what's memorable. You want to know why? Because everyone thinks that they're a good person. Everyone thinks that they're a good person, especially white folks, because it's not about what you do. It's not about what you act and how you act, or it's about, I'm just inherently good because I am good. Right? But again, if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, if you grew up poor, whatever, on some level, we've all been told we're not good. But in white cultures in particular, and especially WASP ones, you're just good inherently, right? And so you're just a good person. That's another reason why they lose their shit. White folks, when you use the term privilege, it's like, what are you talking about? I'm a good person. But again, so much of this is informed by these bullshit stories that we're just born into. Some of these stories are meant to destroy people and others are meant to insulate them, right? Some of us inherit wealth in this place, and some of us inherit struggle, right? Sometimes it's both. God damn it. Could have been both for me, and fucking, it's the only time where buy would have been nice. But anyway, back to the point. Right? We can't mock something we're not allowed to even say. We can't interrogate or examine or subvert conclusions that people drew if we can't even play or say what those assumptions or stereotypes are. And not everybody's going to land it, but I'm going to protect with everything that I fucking have our right to fail, because honest to God, all activism is failing in public. That's all art is on some level. It is, but it comes from a generative place, and that's what we're not doing. We're not generating anything. We're not generating language. We're not generating thought. We're not generating discourse. It's just outrage. How fucking empty, right? My job should be to be able to convey and communicate things and material and jokes that actually work. In everywhere else in America, that's not the coasts. Which means the fastest way to do it, because so much of comedy is timing, is what's the most important thing? What is the most important thing? Right? Was the term that I used most important, or the argument that I said? Who hasn't been in a fight, right? With a friend, significant other, whatever the fuck, right? You said some shit and all they talk about was the tone, or cherry picked a word that you used. Doesn't that fucking piss you off? Because it was more important about the thing that you were trying to convey. It was more important that you were understood. The most important thing in conflict isn't agreement, right? The most important thing in conflict is not agreement, it's understanding. And that is why in so many conflicts, right, that never ended, it wasn't because of the offensive thing itself. It was how the person treated your reaction to the offensive thing. That's what's unforgivable. The lack of understanding, the lack of curiosity. When people cherry pick, right, a certain thing, or tone police you or whatever, and let's be fucking rational, right? Being upset or frustrated or angry, these are not things that are abusive. These are not things that are unsafe. Let's be really clear about the parameters I'm working in. It's called common fucking sense, right? That's the parameter. We would not accept that in our own lives. When you are trying to convey a very important thing to somebody and they refuse to engage with what you're saying simply because you used a word that wasn't spot on, that's infuriating. And I know, because I'm usually the person that's like, that wasn't the right word. But you know what? I've learned to keep that shit in my fucking head. I make sure I'm exacting with my terms. I make sure that my shit is good. I have people around me who care enough to give me that space and that bandwidth, because I've earned that trust. Right? I've earned it. I deserve trust. We deserve trust, and we deserve the opportunity to fail. As we are all on this path to try to figure out how the fuck to get free, which was the point. Freedom, freeness, full artistic expression, that's it. We do that by problematizing and engaging directly with, not against each other, not against ideas. And somewhere along the way, we became incredibly artistic to ideas and ideation and creativity and play. That's it. We in refusing to engage, right? We can't problematize it. If we aren't allowed to problematize it, right? Not only do we remove ourselves from responsibility, if we just go to outrage, we remove ourselves from responsibility for, how it's understood and how it's heard, right? We also deprive ourselves the opportunity of engaging in artistic expression, right? Most importantly, or most damningly, we create a fully free runway for the right and all the fucking bigoted losers out there to completely own the narrative on it. That's it. What happened to curiosity? Right? So, and again, I think it's okay to be protective of, trans folks, with this person, right? With this comedian who was like, that joke, I found that joke offensive. I think it's dangerous. I don't like her comedy. I don't fuck with her comedy. You can have all those opinions, but it was interesting to me that in the desire to protect trans people, right? In the moment that the comedian said what they said, she was on the outside of that. What are we protecting each other for, if not to be our full selves in public? Right? Funny is good. Funny is how we stay. Funny is a Black tradition. Funny is a Jewish tradition. The stage, the comedy stage in particular, is a democratic exchange of ideation and ideas. It's a fight. It's a place where people get to say in real time whether or not they can buy in to what I'm presenting. Comedy should never be canceled, and comedians shouldn't either. You don't like a comedian? How about instead of fucking trying to cancel them, you just champion a person you fucking love? Be even better if they were on the side of all the things that you align yourself with. Where are we allowed to do that anymore? Where do democratic exchange of ideas happen anymore, right? Not really in schools, There's a power dynamic in there, and you usually got to have money. Somebody gave me a JSTOR login fast, by the way. What the fuck? I need to read. All right? That's not a normal place where people go. It's not an accessible place. Right? Online, well, that's where we all go to die a little bit. Right? You have to ask yourself, like, where's the comedy stage is one of those places. Right? That's where Jewish people could and have made fun of their cheapness, where East Asian, South Asian people made fun of their cheapness on the thrill of a deal, right? Where Jewish folks got to be their full neurotic, theatric, expressive selves, where they get to talk about their mom. It's where we get to talk about our real life and full stories. But in the way they owned the narrative. They became some of the authors of the narrative by doing that, right? Don't we want to be in charge? Don't we want to be able to shape and inform how we're understood in the world? When did we decide that we were better than that and bigger than that? You know what we are? We're people who are reacting and living within the confines of transphobia, not transcending it. That's sad, because we're so much fucking hotter and funnier and more interesting than that. That's what happens when we accept the conditions that this bullshit colonial billionaire informed worldview. That's what happens. That's what it looks like when we accept the tradition and betray full artistic expression. The last point that I'll make, just to throw a fucking wrench in here, right? The last point I'm going to make is this one joke. And I think I'm going to tell you a little bit about this comedian, right? I knew she was going to be fucking huge, and I hope she becomes that. Jordan Jensen, she's crass, she's hilarious, she looks and acts and sounds every inch a dyke. She's not, shockingly. She was raised by 2 lesbian parents. And, is very much straight. And she walks a line, right? She walks a line. And I tried to find the joke that I felt, could teeter either way. And I'm asking you, and I'm going to ask you a question, right? And it's the only question that matters afterwards. But why don't we run that Jordan Jensen clip?
You were dating a man who transitioned to a woman? Male to female, that's the one that's hard for me. Female to male, whoa. Male to female is tough for me, though. I've had to overcome a lot of prejudice against it. You should get a vagina, get whatever you want, but take a couple of my ovarian cysts. Was your boyfriend very effeminate before?
No.
What?
They're like a butch lesbian now.
Oh, they're a butch lesbian now. You know what? I don't like that. Why don't I like that? Let me look within. I think it's because you're a man, right? Ideal thing chosen by God. You transition to a woman, that's hard to be a woman. So you gotta go through you become an underdog a little bit in society. But then you're gonna transition to be a lesbian, now you're the underdog. But really, you're just a fucking dude. I know that they view themselves as a woman, but there's part of that, because you see them and you're like, oh, they've undergone all of this stuff, but really it's like if I wore blackface. That's what it feels like. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense, or am I being a bigot? It doesn't make sense. Interesting.
So, without a fucking doubt, right? There's some people out there that's like, that's so big. So much so, actually, because, again, I told you I like who I like, and, I'm making some waves in the comedy scene myself, quietly. But again, it's because I feel, and I'm allowed to feel free, because I can't, I'm too small. You put me in a box, and I just kind of just find my way out of that. I'm a little guy. But let's talk about this joke, because I think it would be very easy to classify this as transphobic. And actually, and of course, there's even a blackface reference, right? I mean, this is it. This is it right here. These jokes are the culmination of everything we've talked about, and now it's put us on the back foot, right? She says, oh, but he's a dude, right? And then makes a blackface reference. How many times you heard me say gender and race are not fucking comparable? Sometimes they're helpful to understand one's personal experience, but in terms of systemic oppression, just not fucking comparable. One is trustworthy. The other is not in terms of understanding power. Let's get the fuck into it. This joke, I know it's controversial enough because I remember this clip. I had this clip, came across this clip earlier this year, right? Tried to find it, couldn't fucking find it anywhere, got scrubbed from the goddamn internet, right? She has a Netflix special coming out. I'm sure that this got called out. Every reference to blackface in of itself is huge, right? But I want to, so now, okay, was it funny? That's the only, first of all, that's the main fucking thing. That's the main job, right? If I'm a painter, right? My main job is to what? Fucking paint. If I'm a comedian, my main job is to what? Be funny, tell jokes, right? But if we don't understand the craft, right? I walk in, and how many times have you walked into one of these galleries and studios? And I'm wrapping up this my whole argument here, right? How many times you walked into a studio or some gallery or something, and you thought, I could have fucking done that shit. I could have painted. I really could have painted. I could have painted that, right? Yeah, you think that, but you don't know how it was executed. You can't appreciate how it was made, what it took, the craft. Sometimes we get what it's trying to say. Most of the time, I don't. If I'm just keeping a buck, I love artist write-ups though. Because I'm just like, they use some language in that because they're just like, I can't distill this down into words, right? And I love words. But let's actually examine the joke. On the surface, you could call that transphobic, right? Yeah, but he's a dude. Let's talk about it, right? Because everyone, there have been a subset of people who have referred to Jordan Jensen, and I do think there's a little bit of what's it called? When you've got Austin Brain, right? Austin Brain is just like that stupid brain rot side of comedy, and I know she'll go up but that's because, right? We've made it cool to talk about trans people. We just decided that we weren't going to engage along with everyone, right? Because you wanted attention. Trans people were like, pay attention to me. It's my pronouns. I'm being oppressed. It's me. I'm special. I'm unique in how I experience this oppression. Nobody cares. Nobody's getting my pronouns right. But then when people started paying attention, here's the thing with attention, niggas. It's really hard to get. And when it comes, you don't get to control it. And if you have called for it, you want to know what being responsible is? Riding that fucking beast to the goddamn wheels fall off. That's what's fucking responsible. We say, pay attention to me. When I called attention, I'm going to be the leader I committed to fucking be. I'm going to come out swinging and fighting, not crying victim and then policing what everybody else fucking says. Right? We want to cancel this person, cancel that person. This man did this. We have decided that we get to make assumptions about people's intentions. When the fuck did we get to do that? Let me tell you what makes this material brilliant. What's so funny? I asked a black trans girl comic, a comedian, right? Friend of mine. I said, what did you think about this? She goes in and she was just like, in this political climate, I said, stop. Was it funny? Did you find it funny? She goes, yeah. Actually, I did. I said, what was funny about it? She explained it. And I said, now tell me how what was funny about this aided in this transphobic narrative in the world. Like, can you actually prove that that's true in any meaningful way? Right. And isn't the point, not that certain art exists, right? But that sometimes it's the only art that exists. Well, isn't that, but that's, okay. There was a point, I'm about to blow your fucking minds, okay? There was a point where the only black films we ever got to see was plantation slavery films, or it was either plantation films with black art or cinematic servitude, which was you were servants, right? And that was the normal thing. You wanted to win an Oscar, you just showed black people in chains on a plantation, or you showed them in some kind of servitude, right? Think The Help, think Green Book. Like, you got to have this white savior come in and do all the things, right? That was the norm. My issue was never that art existed, right? Sometimes it was our folks who write and make it. My issue is it was the only art that existed. And that we needed a more democratic, balanced worldview that had more people coming in with more stories, and the more people who looked and thought and whatever, like me or like you or whatever, allowed for that to happen. We made it so that we were like, trans people have a right to exist, and then decided that we called attention to ourselves and we said, we have a right, but then we decided that we were not going to have a hand in shaping any of the ways that people talk about or think about trans people, where art happens and is made, where it's debated, because outrage was all we needed, which is why we are incapable of defending our arguments in any meaningful way. I could have told you in 2 seconds how the fuck to end this trans kid debate, right? The right to, they're castrating children. It's dangerous. It's crazy what they're doing to kids, right? We really could have just said, okay, why? Oh, because of the HRT stuff. Okay, great. You know that regular kids, like cis kids, use that more. Or how about this? Be more direct. So okay, so you're against HRT in children completely, right? What happens when a 9-year-old girl starts to develop too early, right? That she starts to get breasts. A 9-year-old girl starts to get breasts, have a period, gets wider hips. Are you okay with a child being sexualized? What? Are you crazy? No. Okay. So that child uses HRT. She uses blockers to ensure that she doesn't have early puberty. Did you know that they work that way? You said they were dangerous for kids. Sounds pretty actually protective. Okay. What about if a boy, right? Everybody's on testosterone, all these young men, right? But what if he's 14, testicles haven't dropped, he sounds like a fucking altar boy, right? Hasn't grown an inch, isn't getting any puberty, nothing's progressing, right? He has to go on HRT. You're a proponent of that? Yeah, right. So here's the thing. It's not about getting them to agree with me. Ultimately, one of two things is going to happen. And both of them work in my favor. One, I've made my argument, right? And have won this person over, or at the very least, the listeners. Or two, this person's transphobia is just naked and on display, because then they would have to admit, I'm actually okay with regular kids having it. I'm just not okay with trans kids having it. So then it's really not about the safety of children, which is what that was the veneer they're hiding under, but we just chose not to engage at all. And the truth is, I looked, most of the time it's because we didn't have the arguments, because we refused to even engage with each other or lesbians or gays, our closest allies, right? On the assumptions. Okay. Now let's go back to Jordan Jensen's fucking joke. She starts out with saying, I have some prejudice on this. I'm prejudiced. So we're living within the understanding I am acknowledging I'm prejudiced. Then she's presenting what? Her prejudiced views, right? When the person says, yeah, I'm this, and then I'm this. So I became M to F, right? She says, I don't like M to Fs that much. I love F to Ms, right? And I'm the opposite. I can't fucking stand trans men. The white ones in particular, right? Not the cool ones, right? I can't stand. I'm like, which pick? You know what? that's a bit. But the other thing is, I also discovered I was a little bit homophobic by becoming transgender. That's the comedy stage, and the artistic expression is where I get to work it out and mock it and call it stupid. Do you know what that means? The bias doesn't live inside me, tacitly informing my positions and my opinions secretly, because I'm not committed to being a shit person. No, put it out on display and make fun of it and allow people to make fun of it fucking with you. Admit your contradictions. That's all she's doing. But also, when we're full of them, I want you to ask yourself something. Have you heard the thoughts in your head? Do you listen to yourself? You're fucking batshit, right? We're all decent people until you get cut off on the freeway and your calories are low. And they're like, I need to fucking look at who's driving that fucking car. I know who's driving that fucking car, right? You're like, it's an older person, it's a woman, or they're Asian. That's not because you believe that shit. That's because the world has taught you it's going to be one of those, and most of the time it is. And the point is that you still have to call it fucking stupid to think it, and call yourself out on it, and you get on a stage and you make fun of it. That's how you reject racism in action, right? Okay, right? When did she say? Well, like, what did she say? Okay, she goes, yeah, you skipped over the ovarian cyst. I feel some kind of way about that. Yeah. That's that. Yeah. Yeah. We don't give a shit about what happens to cis women's bodies at the fuck all. Cis women and women talking about their personhood and the experience that they have is not fucking transphobic. Please be so fucking serious. A woman talking about her period or experiencing that. I mean, we haven't had any major, they just decided in 2025 that maybe they should study period blood to get a sense of whether women were healthy or not. We don't understand endometriosis. We don't understand why Black women and Asian women have more fibroids than anyone else. We haven't made any significant scientific discoveries on bitches in years. Decades. Most under-researched, under-resourced, under-thought of, under-considered half the fucking population in the world. That is a fun way to point out. And you want to know how she pointed out? She didn't say, fuck trans women. Fuck trans women. What about my ovarian cysts? She said, I'm prejudiced. I admit that I have bias. What about these ovarian cysts? You didn't take these. And she's, oh, I really don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. Why don't I like that? Asking the question on stage, inviting people to participate in it, right? And ultimately lands with, does that make sense? Am I a bigot? Am I big? This is exactly that. And shouldn't I be offended? Should you reference blackface? Shouldn't I be fucking offended? No, because I'll even defend blackface if it's fucking satirical and good. Wesley Bell, the preeminent Black film critic in the country, right? Talks about 30 Rock and Ta-Nehisi Coates as well, right? One of the preeminent scholars, academics on race dynamics in the country, right? Two heavyweights were like, yeah, 30 Rock did racial satire better than any other thing. They haven't seen anything better. They had a blackface episode. It got pulled. Shouldn't have. Right? If when done well, not if, when done well, when done so well, it makes fun of it. Racial satire puts us on the hook. It forces us to make fun of the things that we already believe inside of us. And the more that we make fun of them and mock them and make them small and marginalize them, the more that we're allowed to do that, right? The faster those fucked up ideas die inside of us and better ones, funner ones, funnier ones take place. I believe in our art and artistic expression, and most importantly, I believe in us. I trust us, and and we deserve, just like every other type of artist, to fail. And when we start putting checks and balances on the process itself, right? When there's so many things, so many obstacles, so much it takes to just be able to get up on a stage, right? To do it and to feel like the people that you wanted to champion and make good comedy for don't even have the fucking time of day to care for the craft or help you get good or give you the time to do it. Fuck you. Right? Not literally. Not literally, guys, right? But like when it's said like that, doesn't it sound absurd? Doesn't it sound absurd? We have put so much emphasis on policing people's language that we stopped making it. We have lost our sense of humor, our sense of possibility. It's all about, what you can and can't say under fascism. While our rights are getting gutted, this is the thing that fucking moves you. Come on, right? And by the way, no, like this is not beef. This is what it got me thinking on when that question was brought up. It wasn't like this person was get off the stage, but if that joke was on the internet, I know that's exactly what would have happened. Because I've seen it happen too many times before. Trans comedians are weak because the trans community is weak. It's weak. Your jaw is made of glass, right? Trans comedy can't evolve unless trans people step out of this reactionary, reactive, boring place of, we need to live in the confines of what is transphobic or not to full and free artistic expression. A good trans comedian will do so much more good in the world, a great transgender comedian, than any damage that a bad transgender joke could do, because they're a dime a dozen and they're already here. And they And the story about trans people, the narrative about us is already out there and it fucking sucks. It's boring. Shouldn't we have a hand in writing it too? Shouldn't we be able to be fucking the funny, full, hot people that we are? I'm not interested in trans comics the way that Baldwin wasn't interested in being a Negro artist, right? The word evolved, right? Saying I'm a black artist now means something completely different than it did then. But trans artist is where we are now. And if we don't give ourselves freedom to grow and evolve, to laugh and play and have fun and to fail with each other, holding down each other. And that's true. Everything I'm saying is true of the entire left because we participated in it and we normalized this stupid culture, right? The right is just a bunch of like pansies. We already knew, right? They'll just do whatever we do, but they'll go where we won't go. We should have a hand in writing the story about who we are. In fact, we should have the best hand, the best cursive, the best takes, the best jokes we already have, we always have. And I think it's about time that we prioritize that, the making of art, and freeing ourselves over policing language and imprisoning ourselves within the limited imagination of bigots. I love you all so much. I hope that you enjoyed this fucking episode. I got so much more to say on this. I can't fucking wait to yap your ear off on all the things. But if this said something to you, spoke to you, whatever, offended you, I'd love to know. Because the offense is not a danger to me. Sometimes it's the point. But sometimes the best way to learn something is having other people give you feedback. When those white guys laughed at my BLM joke, it wasn't the right kind of laughter. I got my muscles strong. And now that's a great joke with the right kind of laughter. But it never once occurred to me to sacrifice the laughter. Never. And if we don't start having more fucking fun, we're going to die in this bullshit hellscape. And fuck that. We're having fun. I love you so much. We're going to make some damn good art, right? But the reason why, and the final thought on this, the reason why Jimmy Baldwin called it everybody's protest novel is because if your knee-jerk reaction, right, is to do activism in your art more than art as an activist and artistic expression, right? You're not doing the good work where you ought to be. You are misplacing. I never worry. I'm never made I can't be made to feel insecure about what I believe because I know what I believe and I have a body of work to support it. But sometimes we misapply organizer or like activist purposes in the wrong place. And so the lift is too heavy, right? When you're in an artistic space, you're supposed to be able to be in an artistic space and feel free and playful. And sometimes when I'm on a stage and the purpose is protest, I'm not making fucking jokes. I'm still making jokes, but that's not the point. When I'm on a comedic stage though, that's the point. And because of who I am, my activism is always on stage with me. Always. And if you have any doubts about that, why don't you get you some credentials, get you some good work, have a body of work that even comes near mine, and then come talk to me. Show me that you care. Because the ability to criticize doesn't mean shit, but critique requires care and change and courage. Outrage is dictatorial, authoritarian, fascistic. Art, well, that's the most free and democratic thing that we can engage with. May we all allow ourselves to be as fucking free as possible under fascism. I love you all so much. I hope this found you in best spirits. I can't wait. Corey's on me. It's true because I got to get back on social media. And I'm looking out there and I'm just not getting, the takes aren't getting better, y'all. So we are all going to have to do, not just me, we're all going to have to do that forward march. But I hope this sends you out in a good way over the weekend. And I'll be thinking about you. And unfortunately, you're probably going to have to see me at some point. online. No, I'm actually looking forward to it. The takeover is coming. We are honing. But I do hope this made you think. I hope I made you laugh. I hope that you become comedy fans. I do, because it forced a level of tolerance, a quickness in me, and a thoughtfulness in me that could only come from that space. I get different kinds from different places, but it only comes from that space. Come on the journey with me. Come away with me. It's adventure time, babies. I love you all. Take care. We get to still have fun. You know that, right? We get to still have fucking fun, and we get to laugh. That is why and how so many of us under the worst kinds of oppression stayed alive. So, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Love you! Peace.